Are we good to go? Thank you, everybody, for coming here tonight. We are excited to be here. Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. We are so excited to be able to celebrate our art scholars, but first we have to take care of the business of officially calling this meeting to order. So with that, John, has this meeting been properly noticed?
It has.
With that, can we take a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum, starting with Juan Carlos?
Here.
Joe?
Here.
Jen? Here. John?
Here.
And I'm here. We officially have a quorum. Joe, could you read our equity framework and our land acknowledgement?
The VASD Educational Equity Framework says, in the Verona Area School District, our mission is that each student will acquire the knowledge and skills necessary to achieve their personal goals, thrive in a diverse global society, and lead a healthy, self-fulfilling life. To meet this mission, the Verona Area School District will ensure that every individual has access to the educational, social, and emotional support they need to feel valued and affirmed in their unique identities and experiences. We acknowledge that inequities and power dynamics exist in our system, such that some individuals, on the basis of their identities, face barriers to accessing the opportunities they need to experience success. In acknowledgement of such, the Verona Area School District is committed to disrupting these systems of inequity. And the Ho-Chunk land acknowledgement says, there are currently 12 tribal nations who call Wisconsin home, with the Ho-Chunk Nation being the primary group living around Madison. No matter where you are in the state, you are on the ancestral land of a tribal nation. As we begin our meeting, we honor the land upon which we stand.
Thank you so much. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at tonight's agenda? Yes. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? So moved. Motion from Jen, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Joe. All in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Tonight's meeting has been officially adopted. Thank you for bearing with us as we get over with the nitpicky stuff. We can get on to the fun, exciting part of honoring our art scholars. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Flaherty.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right. You gotta have the same excitement I had when I saw that art gallery. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. You gotta imagine. We are extremely excited to be here today to celebrate our phenomenal scholars here in the Verona Area School District. We want to recognize their brilliance, their just not just their artistic abilities, but you saw meaning behind every student in each of their pieces of artwork. Their stories, their emotions, their wants, their desires, their history, all came to life and produced in the form of art. We had the honor, and you had the honor of being able to just go and take a quick snapshot of what that means for each and every child in our organization. We also have, and I'm just going to say it because, again, the best staff in the state of Wisconsin. And I want to thank you. Our staff are just amazing as they guide our scholars on this journey, as they put their love and care into each individual student, and as they let, what comes as a thought transform over to the canvas or the area. And it's just such a special day when this is able to come alive, when it's beautiful outside, and so what? There's art to be celebrated, and that's what this is all about. So we're going to get a chance to acknowledge all 13 winners, and this is going to be my one and only time representing Taylor Swift at number 13. You think it's bad news? Because someone called my wife and said I did Taylor Swift. I said I acknowledged Taylor Swift today.
It's on tape.
It's on video? All right. So my son did it. All right. It's her favorite number for all of us. I just learned it this morning. So it's not like I do it. But we're excited to get started, and we're going to recognize all of our scholars here shortly. I'm going to have the honor of reading a short bio in each one as they present their art. And we're going to get started with our first scholar, and that is Mr. Gavin Cook. Gavin's a second grader at Glacier Edge Elementary, and I'll be Gavin is a second grader at Glacier Ridge Elementary. It's difficult to summarize all of Gavin's positive qualities in one short paragraph. Every art class, he arrives ready, attentive, respectful, focused, and incredibly kind. Gavin is mature beyond his age. He is a friend to everyone. Peers want to be near him and want to be his friend. He is also a wonderful help to Ms. Feiner and his classmates. Gavin has been known to instantly stop his work and rush to assist others with their unexpected spills or extra large messes to clean up. Gavin is a compassionate and empathetic young man who is very intuitive, engaging the feelings of others. And when needed, he quietly and calmly offers his welcoming, positive demeanor to show his support and understanding. Gavin enjoys art and his time in the art room. He is focused and deliberate in his style. He's not afraid to try new techniques and adventure beyond the targeted artistic objectives. He also understands the importance of completed work with quality craftsmanship. He is proud of his work. Gavin's intrinsic skills and traits make him a highly valued asset to our school. Congratulations, Gavin. Ms. Feiner feels fortunate to be your art teacher and looks forward to seeing the years ahead at Glacier Edge Elementary Art Room. Congratulations. Next is our honor to bring up Leah Anderson. Leah is a 12th grader at Verona Area High School. I met Leah Anderson as a Drawing 1 student and have since seen her grow as an artist and contributor to the entire art community at Verona Area High School. As a senior, Leah now serves as a student teaching assistant to an Introductory Art Foundations course. Famous for her rainbow striped leg warmers. Leah always focuses on what is possible and what can be done. Leah's consistent, yes, let's try that attitude has led her to create increasingly impressive personal works of art. Additionally, from tiny table name tags to large-scale school-wide exhibits and displays, Leah's community-oriented actions make our school a better place. I consider myself very fortunate indeed to have experienced Leah's bubble of effervescence during her tenure at Verona High School. That's from instructor Ms. Liz Tremikas. Thank you so much. Next, we are going to honor Eden Westfall. Eden is an 8th grader at Badger Ridge Middle School. I have had the pleasure of teaching Eden for the past 3 years in art class. Eden is very creative and sets high standards for herself in the art that she creates. She pays attention to details, which is evident in this painting. More importantly, Eden is a very kind student and is always willing to help me when I have odd jobs in the art room. I look forward to seeing all what she would create through the upcoming years at the high school. That's from her instructor, Ms. Sarah Grotsky. Thank you. Next, we have Grace Parkos. Grace is a 12th grader at Verona Area High School. I've had the pleasure of teaching Grace in multiple art courses over the past 2 years, and I'm so happy to have the opportunity to recognize her talent and contributions to the VAHS art department. She is a quiet, diligent art student whose meticulous attention to detail sets her apart from her peers. In fact, her peers are drawn to her artwork, asking questions and expressing excitement and interest in her ideas. From hyper-realistic drawings and paintings to intricate paper sculptures, to whimsical ceramic dinosaurs and fruit, Grace is an artist who is skilled in many mediums. You're testing my vocabulary skills for me. I'm always excited to see what she'll make next time. I have no doubt that Grace will continue to excel in her artistic endeavors and use her gifts to visually impact the world. That's from instructor Kayleen Parker. Congratulations, Grace. Next, we get to honor Cecilia Schwartz. Cecilia is a third grader at Core Knowledge Charter School in Miss Thompson's class. Cece is a kind and talented artist. I love that nickname. She loves making art and hanging out with friends and family. Each art class, Cece comes ready to try something new. She enjoys painting and creating colorful works of art. I've loved getting to know Cece, and it's been a delight working with her. Congratulations from Ms. Tina Christensen. Next we have Samir Bander. Samir is a second grader at Verona International School. Samir shows consistent dedication to developing his craft. He is always ready to learn a new technique. He also looks for ways to improve his work. Rather than rushing through, Samir will pause as he nears completion and thinks through things he can add. I'm always impressed with the amount of effort he puts towards seeing his ideas through and showing the craftsmanship that he uses. One can find Samir passionately discussing techniques and choices he made about his work with others. While he has no shortage of ideas, he will also ask for tips to challenge him and take his work to the next level. When working on creative choice projects, one can find him sketching illustrations. Samir, your flexibility in thinking and your ability to work independently or with others will help you in the future to achieve your goals in many different environments. Thank you to Samir and Tiffany Laxton. Next is our honor to bring Celia Zimmerman. Celia is a ninth grader at Verona High School. Celia has been an outstanding student since day one in our foundations. She has always gone the extra mile to do well in her class projects and in her own artwork. Having observed her work ethic and diligent presence in class, it made me wonder what opportunity I could offer her. When the Distinguished Art Scholar Award was mentioned, she was a student who jumped to my mind. It was a delight to see her face light up when I asked her to create a piece for me to be framed, and she instantly created small thumbnail sketches of her grandma's home, a place which holds a large place in her heart and brings nostalgia with memories of exploring ruins, apple trees, raspberries, and the forest on her grandma's 200-acre land. I'm hoping that her pencil-drawn pieces brings out a warm feeling and childhood nostalgia for those who view it. And that is from Esther Chu. Congratulations to Cecilia. Next we have Elise Bindle. Elise is an 8th grader at Badger Ridge Middle School. Elise is a talented artist and kind scholar. I'm excited to celebrate her and her talents. She takes pride in her work and pays close attention to detail. She demonstrates high craftsmanship in every piece she creates. I have enjoyed getting to know Elise and seeing her grow as an artist. She is a kind and thoughtful scholar. The artwork you see is Elise's scratchboard drawing. As a viewer, you can see her skills shine in this piece. If you look closely, you can see the visual texture she has created in her wildcat's fur. Stunning. Congratulations, Elise, from Tina Christensen. Next we have Beatrice Gully Stump. Beatrice is a 3rd grader at Country View Elementary with a wonderfully creative mind and a real talent for art making. She is an amazing art student who willingly participates in our class discussions, which helps her and others deeply understand art and design content. Beatrice is also very dedicated to her craft, using all her time in art wisely so that she can bring her creative visions to life. I love it when it's time to clean up and she asked for just an extra minute or two to finish detailing her work. When you look at her creations, you can see the level of care in her stylistic choices and the attention to details. I'm grateful to have Beatrice as my student at Country View. I find her creativity to be an inspiration to myself, her classmates, and our school. Thank you, Beatrice, for allowing us to celebrate your creative spirit. From Cole Melvin. Next, we have Bella Del Carlo Jefferson. Bella is an 8th grader at Savannah Oaks Middle School. Bella's creativity and love of art have been evident from the time she entered 6th grade at Savannah Oaks. She is an amazing problem solver who is always thinking outside the box. Bella uses her imagination and takes risks. She always seeks ways to improve upon her work, and her attention to detail is simply outstanding. Besides Bella's creativity, she is also a warm and positive person. Her peers admire her and see her as a leader. I know that Bella will continue to lead and shine in high school and beyond. I feel honored to have been her teacher for the past 3 years, and I look forward to hearing about her future success. From Cecily Locke. Next, we are going to honor Henley Cundy. Henley is a 2nd grader at New Century School. Henley is an outgoing artist who is eager to learn. She uses art for 2 things, to express her ideals and as a way to give back. Henley has made works that fit a narrative or story, and she envisions in her head, happily communicating ideals with those around her. On top of communicating, Henley is also a planner, drawing creative choice projects. She finds a way to help other artists by creating how to draw works that feature step-by-step directions with pictures. We may have a future art teacher on our hands. Surely. One of her drawings currently hangs in our drawing station. On top of all these things, Henley shows a great amount of responsibility and dedication to our studio space, whether it is taking charge of organizing materials or helping to direct others on where things can go. Henley, keep using your art and creativity to communicate to the world around you. From Tiffany Laxton. Congratulations. Next, we get to honor Diego Corbello Rivera. Diego is an 8th grader at Badger Ridge Middle School. Diego is a kind and compassionate scholar. His focus and dedication to exploring the arts are inspiring. I've loved getting to know Diego and teaching him new skills and watching him grow as an artist. Diego strives to create works of art that capture a wide range of color, value, and realism, which you can see in his ring pop drawings. Diego also enjoys exploring surrealism and using his imagination to create stunning works of art. Diego's favorite medium is drawing. He enjoys exploring and experimenting with markers, colored pencils, and shading tools. Diego is currently learning how to draw anime characters in his free time and also enjoys building things and creating things with his hands. The reason he enjoys these activities is because he finds them fun and relaxing. He likes that there is no right or wrong way to create art. Congratulations, Diego, on earning this distinguished honor. And our next scholar to honor is Josue Ramos Aguilera. Josue is a 2nd grader at Sugar Creek Elementary. When Josue comes to school each Monday morning, he is quick to remind me that Tuesday is art day. How could I forget if he has to be absent? He apologizes, and if I am absent, he makes sure that I'm okay. Isn't it nice to have someone looking out for you? That's the kind of person Josue is to everyone. He knows the art room is a studio space designed for all. and he willingly shares his ideas, space, and knowledge with others. In addition, his eyes sparkle with imagination when he's given a new artistic challenge. One of his greatest skills happens to be his ability to build on his learning, as one idea always leads to another, and he can't seem to work fast enough. When you speak with Josue about his artwork, he will always connect it to a personally meaningful experience. Josue reminds me each week of the joy of making and the need for visual expression. I'm proud to be his art teacher, and I look forward to learning more from him each art day. It's from Ann Cruz. Congratulations. So on behalf of the Board of Education and the entire Verona School District, it is an honor to represent to you our Distinguished Art Scholar Awards for 2024. So thank you.
It is always such a great meeting when we get to have all of this fantastic art here. But one of my very favorite things is hearing what wonderful students and citizens of the ASD, our amazing artists are. So I'm so grateful for you all coming tonight and being able to celebrate your scholars with us and your artists with us. And also, this is a perfect opportunity to thank all of the art teachers as we kick off Teacher Appreciation Day, or week. It should be Teacher Appreciation Year, quite frankly, but as we kick off the week, I just want to say, just on behalf of the board, how grateful we are for all of the work that you do to elevate our students and help them find their true voices and authentic selves. So thank you so very much.
So we're going to do a very quick award ceremony with a plaque and a medal to our winners. We'll begin. If you come up right in order with Gavin Cook. Yep. Correct. So you'll grab your plaque and medal, and yep. They'll take a group picture at the end. Okay. Leah Anderson. Westfall. Ray Parkos. Cecilia Schwartz. Samir Van Dam. Sorry. Samir. Celia Zimmerman. Elise Bindle. Beatrice Gully Stone. Bella DiCarlo Jefferson. Kimberly Cundy. Diego Cabrillo Rivera. And Josue Ramos Aguilera. Can someone please grab Miss Finer? She ran off on me. No.
She's organizing. So while your students have escaped, we're going to hold you all hostage here while we finish the rest of the meeting. Actually, this would be a perfect time if anybody would love to stay. The rest of the meeting will not be quite so exciting as what we have already experienced. But if anyone wants to step out, please feel free to do so without any judgment.
One second, please. Oh, sorry. We want to quickly recognize the lead of the art department and she gets frustrated with me when I give her personal recognition. And give me grief, but I'm gonna do it anyway because I'm up here. So we want to recognize Ms. Lois Feiner for your work and dedication and the leadership of our department with a bouquet of flowers on the back. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
It speaks to their better judgment.
This language arts stuff is really, language arts stuff is going to be really cool. Language arts is going to be a great presentation.
Yeah, drama. That was really, really cool. Okay. I know I feel like I do. Okay. All right, so should we close doors? Yeah. Nate and Rochelle, could you guys pull those closed?
Oh, thanks, Adam.
Thanks, Adam.
Nate, or Richard, can you also remind the crowd there's AP next door?
I don't think they'll be able to hear it.
You don't think so?
I walked over to the study session.
Yeah.
Yeah, I walked over, you can't hear.
As long as the crowd doesn't interrupt the AP study session.
We're fine. We're really, the study session's loud enough. We're really quiet.
Okay, so we'll get doors closed and is the other side closed? Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, I hope everybody feels energized after seeing the art, because we are heading into a big agenda. I'm not saying we are. I'm not saying we're not, though. So it's we've got a pretty full agenda tonight. I hate to, after such positivity, I do want to just on behalf of the board just take a quick second to extend our thoughts and well wishes to our Mount Horeb neighbors as they begin the work of healing after the terrible events of last week. And also, as many are aware, our own Nicole Vapidari was successfully elected to serve as an alder on Fitchburg City Council. So while that is sadly for us, I'm excited for her to be able to continue her advocacy for students in our district in just a different role. That means that she will be stepping down from the board. We will be working to finalize a process and a timeline for an appointment. We'll publicize that once it's known in the upcoming next several weeks. We've got some time, but we'll make sure that we publicize it at a board meeting, in the Verona press, put it on social media. We'll make sure that the process is well known. But I do want to just extend our thanks to Nicole for her tireless work as an advocate for our students here in the district. She truly is an advocate and a champion for students, and her work will be carry on, and she will be missed. So with that, we also have our first agenda item of not an insignificant number of agenda items. Our first agenda item is the board reorganization, and
More important than agenda items.
More important
than
far.
board reorganization is Teacher Appreciation Week/day. So week is the whole week, day is officially tomorrow, I believe, right? I don't know why the distinguishing factor of naming a day within a week, as you said, should be a year.
Should be a year.
But just to elevate, from my own personal perspective, having been a staff member and now having the honor to serve on the board and having the learning curve to understand all of the things that are at play in the district, I do feel that this board and this leadership team wants to show up for staff. We want to show our appreciation not just through words and through cute signage and maybe treat delivery, wink, wink, but by trying to put into practice in tangible ways the appreciation that we have for the staff in the district. So I am appreciative to my fellow board members that carry that vision, because we know that staff are the true path to student success, but also to have a leadership team that honors and reflects that same commitment. So thank you to our educators, to our staff. In whatever role you are in this district, all of you matter. So huge extension of our gratitude on behalf of the board to all of you. Thank you.
You would think for Teacher Appreciation Week, we would not have stacked the Monday night agenda quite so heavy. Lesson learned, we will do better. Okay, so with that, we will now move into board reorganization. Thank you, Jen, for reminding me of the important work that needs to happen. But this also does need to happen. So we do have officer elections as our first part of board reorganization. So the process that we go through is that tonight we will elect president, vice president, treasurer, and clerk. That's a statutory responsibility that we have with a certain timeline that's triggered off of the election. So tonight we will take care of doing that. The process for that, any board member can nominate another member for office by a simple motion. A second is not required. It's not uncommon, but it is not required. For each office, I'll ask 3 times if there are any other nominations for the office that we're voting on. For each office, we will need a motion, a second, and a board vote just to close the nominations. Once we close the nominations, then we'll take a vote on the candidates for each office. If there's more than one candidate for an office, we'll vote on each candidate in the order that they were nominated, and the first candidate to receive a majority of votes will assume that office. Are there any questions about the process? Okay. So the first office up for election is board president, and I just want to take a quick second. I have been on the board for 8 years, and I've had the privilege of being president or vice president for 7 of those years. And in that time, we've built a high school, we've hired a new superintendent, we've passed a referendum, we've implemented an entirely new board governance system, and then there was a pandemic in there too. We've had a lot going on. So it has been incredibly rewarding to lead our board through so many different changes and stages, but it's also been a little tiring, as you can imagine. Thankfully, we have in place a tremendous group of strong student-centered leaders on our board. And at this time, I'm excited to take a step back from the role of president in order to make way for some new energy and some new ideas to come to the front. Okay, I'm not leaving the board. You are all still stuck with me. I'm just going to scoot down a few chairs. But I am very much looking forward to continuing the work of a board member in service of our students, our staff, and our community. So with all of that said and out of the way, I would like to be the first to nominate, make a nomination for president. And I would like to nominate Jen Murphy, who has been an outstanding vice president partner, and just amazing person to work with. I have absolutely all the confidence in the world she would make an excellent president. So with that, I nominate Jen Murphy for president. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Remember, I have to do this 3 times. It's like, any other nominations? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion to close nominations for the office of president?
So moved.
Motion by Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Juan Carlos. All in favor of closing nominations, signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. We now have a nomination for Jen Murphy to serve as president of the Verona Area School Board. All in favor, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Please, who would be opposed? With that, Jen Murphy, thank you and welcome to, are you willing to accept the role of president?
I am willing to accept because I know I am one of 7, well, temporarily 6, but soon to be back to one of 7 amazing fellow board members. So it is an honor to be in this position. I appreciate the fact that you are all thought partners as I take this role, and we'll use you all in that way. So thank you.
Thank you. We're excited. I'm excited to see what comes next for everybody. So I'm gonna still finish up the election process and then turn it over to you officially. With that, we also now have vice president as our next office. And as you know, the importance of a strong team. I know firsthand the importance of having a strong partner. So
I would like to nominate John Corco to serve. as vice president of our school board.
Okay, is there any other nominations? Once? Twice? Last call for nominations. Is there a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Motion by Jen, is there a second?
Second.
Second, is there all in favor of closing nominations, signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all in favor of electing John Porco to be Vice President of the Verona Area School Board, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? John, are you willing to serve as Vice President of our board?
I am excited.
We are honored. So what a fantastic team. Thank you so much. We're very much looking forward to your leadership. So
Literacy background meets math background. There is an
cats and dogs playing together.
I know. Here we go.
Living together.
Oh, and on that note, we need to keep somebody in line with the money. Okay. Our next office up for election is that of treasurer, and I would like to nominate Joe Haynes to continue serving in that role, knowing that he has done such an excellent job so far in keeping things moving and has been just a really fantastic partner in the leadership process. Any other nominations? Going once? Going twice? Is there a motion to close nominations? So moved. Motion by Jen, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Juan Carlos. All in favor of closing nominations, signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Right at this point, we will vote on electing Joe Haynes to be treasurer of the school board. All in favor, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Joe, are you willing to serve as treasurer for another year of the Verona Area School Board?
I am. Sorry, Chad.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Fantastic.
Thank you,
We're very,
thank you.
very excited. Okay, so we have another opening with Nicole stepping down. We have the last office is that of clerk.
I'd like to nominate, sorry, Corby. I know you're not present, and I'm still going to nominate you to serve as clerk, knowing I've also served as clerk, and I will be a buddy. So if you're watching from Paris, I'm going to nominate you and be a buddy if you do that.
What time is it in Paris?
It's early enough you can object if
Midnight-ish,
you
1
want.
a.m.
Yeah.
I think it's creeping in 1 a.m. So yeah, hopefully not watching, which makes it even more fun to nominate Corby for
I
clerk.
second it because he didn't take me.
Okay, any other nominations? Going once? Twice? Is there a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
Motion from Jen, is there a second?
Second.
Second from Joe, all in favor of closing nominations, signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have Corby White nominated to be elected to the position of clerk of the Verona Area School Board. All in favor, please signify with aye.
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 Any opposed? Corby has been elected to the position of clerk. We will see when he returns if he wants to accept that elected office. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm very excited, and congratulations to our new officers. I'm very excited for this next era of our board. So good times. All right. So with that, oh, yeah.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
I want to just appropriately pause and thank Meredith, and I know she's sitting right next to me, but also speaking to the community and crowd as well, for when you think about impact on a district, the legacy is remarkable. And I know you're not leaving the board.
I know.
Yeah, but the fact that your presence of us being able to walk into this building, the fact that you took a chance on a rookie superintendent and myself, and led that hiring committee to bring me, which impacted, so many that are sitting across from you now. The way that we have refurbished and redone the art gallery work that we did today has all been under your leadership. So as you think about just the last 40 minutes and just being able to pull into our parking lot, it's your direct impact of leadership that has allowed that to happen. So we want to especially thank you for the faith that you've given us to lead, and thank you for the outstanding integrity and commitment to the Verona Area School District. Beyond your own child, you thought about every child along the way on your journey. So we're really, really appreciative, and I don't know if words can express what you have meant and we continue to mean to our district. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, again, this is a board of 7, and everything that has been accomplished with the support and the strength of every member. And so it's been a privilege to be the board. And I think the best thing that a leader can do is ensure that everybody can step in and take their place. And I am so thrilled that is where we're at right now, because I think we will be able to continue to grow. Continuous improvement is something that we expect for our district, and we expect it for our board. And happy to pass the baton. Okay. So with that, some of the next agenda items, I think it's for B, C, and D, are all appointments that are made by the president. And since we have had just some recent changes to that role, I think it's appropriate to move to table those agenda items until our next meeting. So our president has a chance to confer with her board and find out who would be best situated for that. So there's a motion to table for B, C, and D. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jen. All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. Items are officially tabled until next week. Jen, get cracking on talking to those people.
Will absolutely do so.
And is there another motion that you wanted to?
Yes, we have, so items E, F, and G.
Do you want to do H, or do we want to do?
Yeah, so we're going to come back to those, right? But I would like to put a motion through to table H.
Yes.
Also, because that's something that doesn't need to happen tonight, and with our robust agenda and again, discussions that I want to be a part of with leadership, I'd like to propose that we put H on a future agenda as well.
Okay, so motion to table H as well. I will second that motion. All in favor of tabling H, please signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? H is officially tabled as well. We do have a few things left. Let's do 4E, approval of the 2024-25 Board of Education meeting dates, times, locations, and monitoring report schedule. Is there a motion to approve those items as presented in the board docs?
So moved.
Motion by Jen. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. All in favor, please signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? We officially have approved the Board of Education meeting dates, times, locations, and monitoring report schedule as presented in board docs. Is there a motion to approve, motion to designate the Verona Press as the official district newspaper?
So moved.
Motion by Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Juan Carlos. All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
The Verona Press has officially been designated as the official district newspaper. Item G, approval to retain Lake Ridge Bank as the fiscal depository for the general fund, payroll accounts, and debt service fund. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Joe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Jen. All in favor, please signify with aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have officially retained Lake Ridge Bank as the fiscal depository for general fund, payroll accounts, and debt service fund. Okay, we can officially now move on to 5. We take a quick second because I am going to hand this meeting over to our new president, ready to jump in.
Great.
All right.
All right, we're moving on to the agenda. We're to the superintendent's report. So Dr. Clay, we're going to turn it over to you and your team.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All
Let's
right.
do it. Let's do it.
Are we gonna talk from a long distance
Just
from
this
now
one
on?
I know, I was just
Just
gonna
one
need to change
time.
seats. That would be just,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you to our language arts team for joining us here today, and thank you to our Board of Education for allowing us the opportunity to celebrate our scholars before we move to the superintendent's report. And we're excited for the opportunities of our board and the leadership. So congratulations to our new president, and congratulations to our new vice president. Yeah. And welcome back.
Old treasurer.
Welcome back to our treasurer. Before we turn it over to the language arts team, I want to join our Board of Education in just recognizing that our district in totality stands with and supports the Mount Horeb area school district. Able to just briefly communicate with their superintendent and provide our support in the personnel or food or anything that we can provide. And they're very, very appreciative of such. I also want to thank our student services members from across our district that show up in so many ways, sometimes physically and sometimes just in documentation support or anything that was needed to support the Mount Horeb community. Here we have we have 38 staff members that reside in Mount Horeb, so definitely a direct impact on families and we care as a humanitarian as we all are. We care about one another, and it doesn't matter if it's next door or across the nation. It matters to us as educators. I also want to quickly acknowledge and thank our strong and partnership with our emergency responders here in Verona and Fitchburg. And you can't take for granted the amount of what it means to have a supportive emergency responders that work hand in hand with us to keep our students safe to the best of their abilities. And we want to continue to have those strong partnerships. So thank you to the chiefs of both departments, of the police departments and the chiefs of both of the fire departments as well for their continued excellence and service to our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our language arts team. As you'll hear why in our rationale, we have really shifted our language here to make sure that we, where we used to say English language arts, we know that we need to move beyond that, and language arts is among all of our languages. So our language arts team, and we'll be presenting on our language arts curriculum that was selected and then placed before the board for later consideration on purchase. Okay.
Well, thank you all for the opportunity to be here today and represent the work of our literacy or language arts curriculum resource adoption team. I've got a few of the members joining us today. So I'll take a minute to introduce them. We have Kathy Collier. Kathy serves as a language literacy and equity specialist at Country View Elementary. She's also our elementary district literacy coordinator. We have Alexis Nass, who's our elementary multilingual program manager. And we have David Van Nostrand, who's an associate principal at the high school and also serves as our secondary district literacy coordinator. So today our goal is to share a bit more about what this process has been like as we've gone through our resource adoption or resource review for selecting our adopted curriculum. We want to name, first and foremost, that our journey with literacy began last year with our district-wide goal and our North Star and our commitment to disciplinary literacy. So this by no means is the beginning of the journey, but simply the next step on the journey. And we know that Act 20 came along and slowly expedited that process, but it was a journey that we were already committed to, and this has allowed us to deepen our work in that way. So as we begin, similar to what we did last month with social studies, we want to make sure that we situate our curricular resources within our larger definition of high-quality teaching and learning. And that comes in the form of our teaching and learning framework. Our teaching and learning framework was built by feedback with students, staff, and our community to tell us about what makes high-quality teaching and learning. Dr. Clarity often references the magic in the classroom. These are the components that we believe are critical to bringing out that magic in the classroom. And when we think about curricular resources, we know that our curricular resources can support engaging and accessible instruction. We know that our curricular resources can support grade level standards as well. We also know they're not everything, right? So while the curricular resource we're going to present tonight is a really critical component of this, it is not to diminish all the other amazing work by our educators to truly bring out that magic within the classroom. What we do know it can do as a curricular resource is it can support teacher planning. It can be a resource that teachers can collaborate on within PLCs to assure that there's curriculum standards at the center. It can also help to alleviate staff from having to spend hours translating materials, right? And can further support them to work on all the other components of their teaching and learning, which we know are so critical. So as we dive in, and I'm going to hand it off to Kathy to talk more about our process, just want to help, again, situate this work and this curriculum resource within our larger definition of teaching and learning.
So at the start of last year, with the Director of Teaching, Learning, and Innovation role being developed, Karen led a curriculum audit to understand the current state of curriculum in Verona. These were some of the critical questions she asked of coaches, teachers, and building leaders. It became clear that Verona was in need of a high-quality instructional resource in language arts. As Amy said, Act 20 expedited the process of a timeline that we were already on. It became clear to us that many of the components of systematic and explicit language arts curriculum were lacking, especially the ones up here in bold. We launched into a curriculum review process grounded in the commitments that are on the slide. We knew that to support the work of coherence and vertical articulation for our students, we would look for a standards-aligned curriculum where students have windows and mirrors to see themselves as well as learn about others and other ideas. We would focus on opportunities for disciplinary literacy and utilize our focus on PLCs as a place to engage with the curricular resource and make sense of it together. We looked at our current state, including student data and teacher feedback. This slide indicates some of the trends in the feedback. And this continual belief and commitment to every student having grade level standards, every classroom, every day, and is supported to meet or exceed grade level proficiency was an important foundation of our team. We centered our students, strove for kindergarten through 8th grade coherence in English and Spanish, and leaned into high quality instructional practices in language arts. There was a real recognition that regardless of which curriculum we chose, it wouldn't be perfect. The importance of the curriculum and the importance of a staff supporting a staff to make sense of the curriculum to meet the very specific needs of our students and can adjust accordingly were part of our thinking. It was important for us to have a diverse team of educators. This amazing team met 11 times between December and April for 2 to 4 hours per meeting. It included 38 educators from every site, spanning pre-K through 8th grade, administrators, coordinators, and all of the roles that are indicated on the left-hand side of the slide. We learned from each other and from the read-aheads or the work-aheads that we did from one meeting to the next to deepen our knowledge of student-centered literacy. Over those 11 meetings, we began by grounding in student-centered beliefs and learning about standards and the science of reading. We grounded in many forms of data, including student data, teacher feedback, and the team's wonderings and questions. In addition, the elementary language and literacy equity specialists across the district conducted an audit of Act 20 in the materials. We'll hear more about some of the other data sources as Alexis and Dave speak.
Okay, so after we grounded in student-centered beliefs and data, the committee developed must-have criteria against which we would analyze the different resources, 11 different resources that we chose to dig deeper into. As you can see, this includes our commitment to every student having access to grade level standards daily. And we also really wanted to find materials that were available in both Spanish and English. Some points of note. The process centered diverse learners, including multilingual learners and students with disabilities from the beginning. And the criteria led us to the narrowing of the resources that we were continuing to explore. There are 4 resources that we wanted to look into further. The committee generated some questions for the vendors of these materials that we shared with them ahead of time. And then at one of the meetings that Kathy mentioned, we spent time rotating between vendors as they kind of answered the questions that we had for them. The committee members had an opportunity to further clarify and just have a better understanding about what was actually in each of the resources. Okay. In addition to speaking with the vendors, teachers tried out materials in the classroom and trying to make the magic happen with these new materials. So pilots happened at the middle school level and at the elementary level in both Spanish and English classrooms, and for whole group and small group instruction. Here on this slide is some feedback regarding the selected resource that was chosen. So this is specific to the selected resource. As you can see, that addresses some of the areas that we were lacking in, such as the oral language development and the vocabulary building. So Dave is going to continue and share more about how we brought an equity lens to the process.
So part of our process was a deep dive into 4 of the curriculums. We were looking specifically for evidence of any kind of bias across 3 different grade bands. We used a rubric generated by the Great Lakes Equity Center, and we want to evaluate the curriculum in 4 main ways. We wanted to see, did it build consciousness for students? Did it reflect students' cultural identities? Did it make diversity visible? And then did it avoid stereotyping, fragmentation, linguistical bias, or any other kind of damaging representations? Our final selection for this K-8 curriculum resource adoption is Sabbath's My View for elementary and My Perspectives for grades 6 through 8. In this curricular resource, we really saw alignment to the VASD equity framework, a representation of our team's must-have criteria. We saw alignment to the Wisconsin state standards that included rigorous learning targets, strong evidence of high-quality early literacy, aligned to science of reading. We saw that it provided high-quality Spanish materials. It had many opportunities to provide literacy. It scaffolded instructions for diverse learning needs. It showcased diverse representation within text materials and diverse authorship. And it truly integrated with Campus and Power School in a way that was going to save teachers time and aid collaboration.
Dave, I just want to clarify, in case it's not clear on the slide, Sabas is the parent company for My Views and My Perspectives, so it's a vertical, it's not two separate companies.
So My View, My Perspective.
Correct, but under Sabas.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. One aspect the Great Lakes rubric really named was representation. This was also highlighted for the social studies adoption process. Our team really remained focused on this throughout the process, and we wanted to highlight a few examples that are just some of many examples. I think that representation is one of the many strengths of the Sabas curriculum. So these are examples from our 8th grade text. We have some authors and we have some texts highlighted. We also have further examples for 7th grade. We know how important it is for students, especially in critical years, all through adolescence, to see themselves reflected in their texts. These are some other selections for 7th grade. And then finally, we have a few elementary examples. We really didn't have to look very hard to see these examples. It's very clearly just an integrated part of the Sabas curriculum to have different perspectives. It's right there in the name. We really found in Sabas a curricular resource with windows and mirrors. We saw the windows and mirrors into resilience. We also saw it in joy and celebration of identity. So we're really excited about all this curriculum resource has to offer for students in alignment with our equity statement. And I'll pass it back to Amy.
So as Kathy named from the forefront, we knew we wouldn't find a perfect curriculum. And we had run our curriculum through different rubrics, different pilots, different vendor sessions, and the Great Lakes Equity rubric as well. And yet through all of those processes, Sabas Red rose to the top. And we still know that with any curricular resource, we will need our PLCs to continue to utilize this robust cycle of inquiry that we've developed so that we can bring a critical lens and our equity lens to any curricular resource that we'd be using, Sabas included, to make sure that it's truly meeting the specific needs of our students here in the Verona Area School District. So this process that we've laid out with PLCs will be no different as we work to integrate a new curricular resource. Instead, it will really be an important foundation by which we question the materials in front of us and think about the specific needs of our students and how the resources are matching and uplifting their identities and their academic and social emotional needs. Moving forward, we know we would need to support staff to understand, build their capacity, their equity lens, and their ability to understand and implement their curriculum. And so we've developed a professional learning plan, including several different summer options for staff in both June and August, as well as opportunities within our welcome back days in PD, and then ongoing support throughout the year through our PLCs, our late start Monday, and some roll-away time, in which we're looking for exciting opportunities to bring all the first grade teachers together to talk about what is this looking like in your classroom, right? And really thinking about our idea of our district-wide goal and collaboration on an even larger scale with this curricular resources being an entry point to that. We're very excited about our next steps and open certainly to any questions that you have tonight. We did pose a few questions for discussion or feedback, knowing that this will be our second curricular resource for next year. And we're wondering what updates might be important for the board or the larger VASD community to know along the way as we implement these curricular resources. Similarly, as we reflect on this process, you'll notice there are likely many parallels to what was shared a few short weeks ago with social studies. Next year, we'll be looking to adopt a secondary science curriculum. And if there are gaps or things that you would like us to further consider in how we're approaching these curricular resources, we would also be open to that feedback as well. So open to any questions or any discussion or feedback that you have regarding our selection of our language arts curricular resource today.
Questions?
For the discussion prompts.
Yeah, the discussion prompts. Anything coming up for anyone from the prompts that are provided, other things you're thinking about?
Because I'm just thinking from a community perspective, how long does it usually take to implement the curriculum and actually have it live in the classroom where students are actually using it from today to if we do approve it, which is part of the process?
First day.
Yeah, day one.
First day, day one,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
immediate.
You're using
Yeah.
it.
Yep, that's why we're here today. We have a sense of urgency to get these materials, high quality curriculum materials in front of students.
I know some families are super excited about that.
Yes, as are we and many of our staff. So we do offer some summer options for staff who want to dig in right away. And then for those that have other plans over the summer, we do have opportunities that welcome back PD in those days that are already scheduled, just for staff to dig in, right? To get used to the materials and begin wrapping their head around what do these look like for students in my classroom. And then, as Dr. Clardy said, day one, we're ready to go. And of course, we will hone our craft, get lots of feedback, and it will be a process of implementation, but we're excited about it.
I think that's a piece I'm thinking about with the first question that you offered about important updates. Just throughout the course of the start of the year in particular, I always appreciate hearing directly from students, right? We want to lift up student voices being the beneficiaries of a rich curriculum and the staff doing the work. And not to say that, right, the team that did this committee work to do this work and the four of you being at the table, it's not to diminish the value you all bring in sharing this, but I know I like to hear kind of directly from the folks that are having to do what we're really asking staff to do is a huge lift for next year. So as much as we can hear kind of from the folks directly, staff and students, I would love that. I know something else that we've talked about at the board table in terms of, you know, accountability to you and what we want to have as data from a board perspective, but certainly just anecdotally some of the formative data that staff gets to gather, that's going to be hugely important, I know, for all of you of what they're seeing day to day in terms of student achievement, accessibility to all of the new curriculum. So even just to hear that, even though we're not using that as a measure at the board table, I certainly enjoy hearing just, again, the data that backs up the day-to-day implementation of some of these things.
Definitely the street data, even from our pilot, was really a transformative part of our own process. Getting a teacher to think about, you can lead through the text and think, oh, it has these components, but when you actually sit down to plan the lesson, it's a whole different lens. And we learned so much from our staff in that process. So we can certainly provide updates from our students and staff about all that information.
Yeah, I think it's also a really important part of effective implementation for us to be hearing from staff and students. What are we doing well as we're implementing, and what can we do better throughout the year, so that we're pivoting as leaders and coaches to support our teachers.
I mean, I would add to that, if there's any way to get feedback from parents specific to the curriculum too, because I know a lot of the, I mean, my experience is primarily with the elementary level, but there's a lot of literacy work that happens at home. And I assume with a new curriculum, that work is gonna look a little bit different. So parents don't get the professional development training on the new curriculum, so there's gonna be some kind of learning curves and maybe some feedback that parents can.
My question kind of tags onto Joe's. I think as parents are hearing there's 2 new curriculums, their students are going to be bringing home, what will that look like for parents? And, you know, is that going to be a dramatically different shift from what their kids are bringing home now, next fall? Is that something that, I can imagine there's maybe some apprehension that they've kind of gotten a system that they're used to. Will this be a change for them?
Yeah, so when we look to adopt the tenets of the science of reading, and all of our teachers are also going through our keys to literacy training, it will be more about our approach and what are the things that we're leaning into, some of the things that we noted on the slide that we've identified as gaps with oral language and vocabulary development. So some of those areas are areas that we will want to emphasize in the classroom, and can certainly partner with families to ask them to think through, here are the ways that you can support this work at home. And we're hoping that we can also generate excitement for students. When they see themselves as in texts that are windows and mirrors for them, they'll want to talk about those things with their families. And we can really support a culture of literacy all around, right? That's the idea of disciplinary literacy. So we're hoping that this new resource will help to generate some of that excitement and spur some further family conversations about what that looks like and how we can continue to partner around helping all of our students to really meet our mission. And we know what a critical role literacy plays in that.
I would just add that a part of the criteria were the home connection pieces of the resource. So that was something that the committee was in tune to when they were looking at the materials.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think that just kind of speaks to the process that's been used for curriculum. Has been really robust and very, very exciting to hear what has gone into such thoughtful selection. It's been incredibly thorough and well done. Thank you for all that work. That's not an insignificant amount of time by any means.
And as we shared last.
I have one other question. I saw on the wish list slide kind of earlier that one of the wish lists was alignment with charter and neighborhood schools. Do we know if the intent is to roll out this curriculum in charter schools as well?
Our charter schools have an option to adapt this curriculum as part of their own curricular adoption process.
Okay, so that'll be something they decide in the future?
As part of their own cycle of curricular resources. Yep, this would be available to them if that was something that they were indeed interested in.
Thank you.
Just a continuation of gratitude as we talk about teacher appreciation. Just again, we lifted this up with social studies, but really acknowledging the work you all are doing, the team of coaches and the staff in terms of just the lift professionally that we're asking of our K-8 staff between now and the start of the school year, and obviously continuing into, but really over those summer months in particular, the amount of time that staff are going to be putting in, and just to really elevate and share gratitude to that. It's not an easy feat, and I know our timelines were not dictated entirely by us. I still want to really honor the work that they're all doing. And thank you all for supporting them.
And we definitely want to provide multiple entry points for staff. There's some staff that want these resources in their hands tomorrow and want to begin thinking about planning, and so that's where we'll offer some of these summer opportunities. And yet, we also want to make sure that there's other entry points for staff who might not even be hired yet.
Right.
To be there, welcome back, and to still feel like they've gotten what they need from the resource, and have the peers to collaborate with through their PLCs to do this work and do it well.
Thank you, team. Wondering if the board would be allowable for me to pause the superintendent's report at A for right now and go to board actions A and B for consideration of the purchase of the curriculum that was selected by our committee and administration. Allow me to release
Mhm.
this team
Yep.
that already put in.
I was gonna propose the same thing, yeah.
today. So
Yeah.
if you need information, additional information relative to the budget transfer and then the alignment to OE6 for the purchase, I can have Chad come up and talk about the transfer process to allow for the purchase, if the board approves the purchase.
Do any board members need additional presentation about the requested transfer that would be necessary for the funds for purchase?
I mean, I think that before we vote on the approval of the curriculum, which I fully support, we should talk about what the cost is, just so that that's part of the vote. And I guess I'd also be curious to know how that cost relates to what we thought going into it, the cost might be for a curriculum like this. Was it more, was it less, was it right about the same?
So just, and just make sure that we're clarifying the language. So the discussion that you wanted to table is the thought process about the purchase, not necessarily the selection.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, so I'll transfer personnel and bring Chad and keep Amy as the three of us who were working directly with vendors on pricing. And we can talk specifically about numbers at that point. Hold tight. Or we can text you. There's specific questions, Joe?
Just like I said, kind of what the purchase price is and how that relates to what we kind of thought going in. And I'm sure there was some variation, but I'm so curious.
So, Dr. Clary, I can kind of set this up in terms of process, and then I think it might be useful for Amy just to give a high-level overview of what's actually in the consent memo in terms of when the purchase will be made and what we ended up for final price. So later on this evening, I think agenda item C, in the superintendent's report, you'll hear from both Rochelle on a hiring update on where we're at with HR and the overall budget, and then Pete and myself will kind of give us an update in terms of where we're starting to think the budget will line up. A piece of that update tonight is relative to us still working in this year's budget, where we had money set aside for debt management and or a fund balance deposit. We're going to work the board through all of that this evening in terms of our recommendation. One piece of that is to have some of the money that was set aside for a fund balance deposit because of the surplus budget now go to a one-time curriculum purchase. The timing for this is perfect. This has been a much different discussion, potentially a couple of years from now, when we're passing a perfectly balanced budget, and then we have to potentially dip into fund balance and finish the year with a deficit budget. That's not the case this year. So similar to what we did with the social studies budget amendment, we'll make a similar recommendation to the board tonight. This is essentially a purchase that no longer would be going, these funds would no longer be going to fund balance or debt management, and instead would be going to a one-time purchase. I think, and I'm happy to tag team Amy, who brought me in at the very end for some negotiations regarding where we ended up with the price. But I'm confident we got a very fair deal in terms of where we ended up with this vendor. The keystone moment in our negotiations in terms of how we manage this contract, the only other school district that put them through kind of the ringer that we did was Detroit Public Schools. Everyone else kind of took offer one and ended up sending that initial proposal to the board. We didn't do that. So with that, I'll turn it over to Amy in terms of timeline and price.
Sure. So within the consent memo, you see there, number 7, there's really 3 line items. The first is for all of our K-5 materials. You see My View and Vision, which is our Spanish materials. That includes all of our teacher and all of our student materials. Additionally, we felt strongly about, as the team named, centering the needs of our diverse learners. So we did offer and purchase some extra sets within there for our BRTs, our bilingual resource teachers, and our case managers as well that have access to those materials. So that's the first number that you see there.
Can I stop you for just a second? Maybe it's just me that can't see it. I'm not seeing a consent memo.
I'm not either, actually. So thank you for lifting that up.
So if you go to, under superintendent's report, the language arts.
Personnel items.
The superintendent's report.
There it is. I got it now. It's
Oh, yeah, or you have the consent.
Ah,
agenda.
thank you.
Up for supervisor report.
Yep.
Is it under which one?
Got it. Did you find it?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Okay, I got it now. Sorry about that.
We're on a link to next to 5 today.
Scrolling, and I'm not gonna ask you.
Under 5A, under 5A.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Sure, so that first line item then is the K-5 materials, both teacher and student, and as I mentioned, those additional sets for our VRTs, our case managers, and then any guest teachers would have access to those as well. The second two.
By doing that, we are hoping that our students can build skills to better access the academic instruction. And when this happens, we truly believe that will increase the number of students meeting graduation requirements that are on our campus. And we'll also be able to better respond to the mental health needs of our students. The systems of supports that we currently have in place are very supportive for the vast majority of our students. And I don't want us to lose sight of that as we are talking about our extended learning pathways. So what this does is there is a small group of students that really account for the majority of our exclusionary practices. And that would include our suspensions, our office discipline referrals, and our seclusion and restraints. And what that tells us is that the students, we're not meeting their needs at this point. And so we need to find some other way in which to meet their needs. And we believe by, again, modifying that environment is going to help to better meet the students' needs. When we looked at our data, we presented this back in November, and I shared the seclusion and restraint data. The data is summarized on this slide, and there's 111 incidents of seclusion and restraint at our elementary level. This is compared to 7 at the middle school and 23 at our high school. The incidents include less than 20 students across the elementary level. So again, it's not a large number of students, but we need to make sure that we are educating every student. And it's important that we look at that. When we looked at that data, that really led us to creating a more robust program for our elementary level. As we started looking at this process, we talked and visited a variety of districts and even private companies. We also did quite a few interviews with families and with students, where for families, their students were not finding success at the elementary level. And at the secondary level, we talked to the students. And what they really shared with us is that it was taking too long to get the support that they needed. And they appreciated all the effort that we were doing, but it just wasn't meeting their kids' needs. At the secondary level, the students really needed a different environment where it needed to be smaller and the instruction needed to be different so that they could feel that sense of belonging and that sense of agency. So those two pieces of information were some of the key components that we used as we developed the different elementary and secondary programs. So now I'm going to transition it over to Carly, who is going to talk a little bit more about foundations.
Just to note, I'm a current behavior support coach for the district, so that's my situation in this team. And again, extended learning pathway elementary is synonymous with foundation, so those two terms might be interchangeable throughout, but we're referring to the same program. So here in our purpose statement, the emphasis continues to be on environment. I know Dr. Hallberg has said that multiple times throughout our discussions already. And creating an environment that more readily supports access to regulation in order to access learning. Elementary students will be duly participating in their neighborhood school and the extended learning pathway program. Time at foundations would be student dependent and based on IEP team recommendations. Participation in the neighborhood school is a priority and will help maintain or promote a student's sense of belonging with their school routines. The emphasis in the development of our criteria was to fine tune this criteria via a team model for student consideration for foundations. So this criteria reflects effort to ensure that school-based teams have access, utilized to fidelity, and exhausted support in the MLSS system prior to moving to consideration for extended learning pathways. In reflection of such, only students with IEPs will be considered at this level. So that is a marked difference between the elementary and the secondary. Differing from neighborhood school districts, area of impairment is not an exclusionary factor for access to foundations. That was really important to the team, that not be based on students' disability area. And behavior support coaching is our current highest tier of social emotional learning support for students and their teams. Thus, completion of a coaching cycle reflects utilization of tier 3 support as opposed to this individual being a gatekeeper for access. Is representative of using all tiers of MLSS system. Again, we want to ensure that the criteria is specific and honors the parent feedback of need for options faster, while also ensuring that all steps of the MLSS process were followed. Program specifications. So foundations is intended to be a short-term intervention for students to acquire skills in a modified environment. So our placement would align with other MLSS intervention cycles of approximately 6 to 8 weeks. And much like other interventions, interventions can be modified and repeated, and that again would be based on recommendation from the IEP team surrounding that student. Foundations is not designed nor intended to be a full-day program, so again, being really cognizant and diligent in ensuring that student continues to have access to their neighborhood school for their most successful times, classes, or activities. Again, this is per IEP team decision and recommendation. Gradual release of responsibility back to neighborhood schools via direct coaching of school personnel, both at the foundation site and at the neighborhood school during placement and after full-time return to neighborhood school. This is to ensure carryover of successful programming and continued team problem solving. We know that consistency across all environments is key for these students, and we want to keep that as a high priority, so we're not having a situation in which a student is accessing foundations, fully goes back to their neighborhood school, and then comes back to foundations, right? So we want to make sure that that consistency of programming is evident and prioritized right from the start. In touring other facilities, we recognize the need for a controlled, small environment whereby the students can learn to regulate their emotions safely. This includes less available access to some parts of the school building, such as exterior exits, large open spaces like libraries, some of those really beautiful spaces that all of our students use. Can be difficult for some students who are have disability-related needs in regards to social, emotional, learning, and behavior. And coupled with giving more access to spaces that can promote physical regulation with the use of sensory tools and strategies. And it's an easy transition between an instructional environment and a more regulating environment, so students can learn to access that as they're responding to internal states of their body. When we more control the environment and focus on strong implementation of non-restrictive interventions, we believe there will be a lessened need for use of restrictive interventions, such as restraint. This is a sample schedule of what staff members' day might look like at foundations, and this reflects multiple groups of students present at the foundation's site throughout a single day. So it's 2 different groupings allows for a schedule to truly supplement times that a student is successful in their neighborhood school. So we are not saying that foundations is only open at this time, so you have to be there or not, right? We are saying that what is successful for the student currently, and how can we build a full day schedule around that? And then additionally, it will give us an opportunity to create thoughtful student groupings. This is potentially K through 8, K through 7. So giving an opportunity to have peers together as much as possible that are similarly aged. So we don't have a situation in which we have a 7th grader and a 1st grader who have very little in common aside from accessing foundations. And then that break in the middle of the day for both teacher prep, collaboration hours, teacher lunch, but also prioritize lunch and recess at the neighborhood school, as we know that is a prime social opportunity for our students, many of whom are successful with accommodations and modifications during those 2 times, and ensuring that students have access to this provided lunches. Now, I turn back to Dr. Halbert.
When we think about staffing, we spend a lot of time trying to figure out the best way to support in a neighborhood school that's still supporting the foundations. And so what we have created, what we're proposing is one individual who is the extended learning pathway lead. This individual will provide direct work with the students in the classroom, and they will work with collaborating with the administrator and the staff of the neighborhood school. So they will coach the staff working with the students who are in foundations, but they also will have the flexibility of going to the neighborhood school and providing that same coaching. So we have the same staff going across the schools to help support the students. This individual is also responsible for the leadership, coordination, support, design, and implementation, as well as the evaluation of foundations. So they'll be kind of taking the lead of developing foundations and bringing back what is working, what else do we need to do. Getting that voice from the staff, because they'll be working directly with them at both sites, and they'll be on the IEP meetings, and so getting that voice from the family as well. We will also have a full-time special education teacher who has experience and loves working with students who have that social emotional need. They would be full-time at foundations, and again, really working and coaching with our students as well as our special education assistants. The special education assistants will be coming from the neighborhood school. So part of the criteria for a student to even be considered for foundations is that they would have exclusive staffing throughout their day. So what this would allow is that staff member to come with and get very explicit support and coaching on how to work with the student and then bring that back into the neighborhood school. Keep in mind, we're not going to be the only one that's bringing it back because we have our extended learning pathway lead also coaching and supporting, but it's a nice way for our staff to get that on-the-job coaching that they can also get at the neighborhood school. Regarding related services, we will kind of work with each individual student, see what is needed, to see where the best place is for the related services. And Harley wrote a grant. We wrote one together and we didn't get it, so now she tried again on her own and wrote a grant to try and get some support for some journey mental health services to actually be brought into our community. So we should find out about that soon.
And if I didn't get it, forget you heard that.
I'm confident you're gonna get it. Just a few benefits of this model. It's positive for students and family outcomes. We are concentrating staff expertise with explicit carryover plan into the neighborhood schools. We have opportunities for staff to really receive that explicit coaching. We have time relief to behavior responders. When you think about that 111 seclusion and restraints. And we just have a hypothesized reduction in overall seclusion and restraints, which is better for our students. And that would also reduce staff. Just real quick, the middle school is really going to be a combination of either the foundations or if they need more like an off-site type of online type of program, then we would use the same curriculum that we are using at the high school level. And so we are really going to individualize for this upcoming year what the services would look like at our middle school. We talked with our principals and they felt very comfortable with that as they are still developing and enhancing their multi-level system of support. And that's really where we want to live before we go and expand to a very different program. So that's kind of where we're living to support that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brian to talk about the high school.
Dr. Albert. So with the high school setting, we really quite frankly had a little bit of a gap in terms of what our scholars were needing. In a few cases, we had scholars that had siblings who had gone through our LEAP programming and experienced success, and they felt they would just want to do the same thing. Unfortunately, they were sophomores. In order to access LEAP, they had to be seniors. And so we had 2 years of this waiting period without having any medication to apply to that academic illness at that time. And so these extended learning pathways really specifically touch on the different routes or different layers that may exist between those tier 2 interventions that we have and extrapolating towards LEAP in that tier 3. And so as you look at those, all are very prescriptive to certain scenarios or very specific needs. Most will specifically target our upperclassmen first, but the idea is that we will have enough opportunity to address needs at lower grade levels. As many of you may already know, 80% of our students will do fine in our tier 1 setting. That tier 2 will usually have about a 10 to 15% of students that need just a little bit more to help be successful. And a lot of these students will fall into that tier 2.5 to tier 3, which is roughly 3 to 5% of our scholars. And so with that, we have some very unique settings that present themselves. And so as you look at these different pathways, Crossroads specifically looks at students that would be 5 or more credits behind in that junior year, as well as RISE does. So you might be asking yourself, what's the difference between these two and why have these two programs? One really specifically targets the student's reading ability. If they have a higher reading ability but are behind in credits, we can use different types of academic medication to meet that need and advance them and help catch them up. Ultimately, this wouldn't be an all-day type setting. This would be at maximum 2 periods of their 7 that they have in their schedule. So they're never really pulled full time from their course schedules. One of the beauties of this system is that we are trying to hand off students as the medication is needed, and ultimately, as it's no longer needed, bring them back down this pyramid of interventions. As you look to our Accelerate, this is a little bit more intense because we have some scholars that are directly working with our alternative education teacher as the teacher of record. And ultimately, again, only 2 of those 7 periods are being accessed. Ultimately, the last stage in this progression is our LEAD program. We still have that. Currently, it can house up to 37 students. However, that's pretty packed. When you're really working with our LEAD students, you're looking at an true alternative, a GED type setting. And so the credits they have amassed up until this point will help show proficiencies to where they're in that program in a shorter amount of time. And the faster we can graduate those students in those specific spaces, it allows for more opportunity to bring others that may need that intervention. As we look at the staffing for that, we have gone through and just most recently recommended for hire an alternative education teacher who happens to be a part of our system currently and has a wealth of experience that lends itself to these exact programs. We are also looking at bringing in specific support staff with bilingual skills so that this is not a detractor for many of our multilingual learners to be able to access these same resources. In terms of support services, they're still going to be heavily involved with the rest of the school setting, our advisory curriculum, and still receive the social emotional learning and supports of the rest of our scholars.
So just to wrap this up, as you are getting questions from the community, a few talking points that we would like to just emphasize is that we are developing programs that really promote a continuum of services. Students are staying within our district. We still have students right now that are receiving services outside of our district. So they might be receiving services at Madison College or at other, we've had students at residential centers, we had students at private agencies. And our goal is to try and keep more of our students within our district. Students who are not finding success are given the opportunity to be taught by district teachers who have expertise in these areas. Also, we have students spending time in their neighborhood schools. So we are really looking at that least restrictive environment and that they still have access and success with their peers. So that's still one of our grounding principles. We feel like it's a safer environment for both students and staff. And we are intervening at an early age, which is what our literature suggests. And we believe by intervening early, it will ultimately increase our success rate. We did have several community collaborations. So we met with our elementary and our secondary principals. We have an elementary work group that met every 2 weeks, as well as a secondary work group that met every 2 weeks to help develop this idea. We met with VESPA and VAEA. And then I have a special ed advisory council, and we shared this with them as well. As you see there, and what you have in front of you, I believe, is our summary of the extended learning pathway, and then our FAQ. We have that available as well. And so, given this programming is expanding our continuum services for students, what updates might be important for the board and the larger community, and also given the information that has been shared, what additional perspective should be considered?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
I appreciate the update. It's a lot of information, and I appreciate that there's foundations, and there's also, we have a lot of names for things, and that gets a little confusing as a board member, so I imagine it gets a little confusing as parents too. So for the foundations part of that, when we're looking at, I guess the questions that I would have, how do you factor in parent input?
It's part of the IB process, and parents are part of that all along the way. And so they'll be part of every decision-making process as we go, from well before even considering foundations, all the way until we would consider foundations. So usually for our students, we have multiple meetings. We meet just about every other week with our students as we are considering foundations, because we want to really try and tweak the IEP. We want to look at the behavior plan. We want to modify services. And then if that's not working, then we would go and consider foundations.
I think that's really important, because I think in the criteria, there's so much focus on IEP and what is not maybe generally known as how much input parents have in that process. And so parent input is just embedded automatically in that system. I have a couple questions. This is back 100 years ago when I was a special ed teacher. I have just my question is just the transitioning, knowing how that was a challenge at times. So transitioning sites, maybe even especially at lunch and recess. How will you gauge success of the program, kind of compared to maybe some of the challenges of reentry? And just that's a tricky time. In the day, I mean
It'd be about 10 o'clock. And it'd be about tomorrow else it would be right around noon.
Okay. Because I can just imagine, knowing kids who kind of have a need for scheduled parts of their day, changing locations could pose a challenge. So maybe the benefit of being in a particular site, there could be issues that crop up just by virtue of having a transition to a different site. back maybe even to their home school. How do you navigate that? Is that with the SEA?
Yes, so SEAs would travel with students via bus routes, and that was for students who can students to that site. Part of being at the foundation site is less transitions throughout that time there, right? There's one instructional room and there's easy access to regulation space. The bathroom is very close to, if not in, the instructional space. Knowing the transitions are really difficult for students, so trying to eliminate or at least pare down significantly the amount of transitions while students are at the site. So that these larger transitions ideally have a chance of being more successful, right? We know that those transitions to related arts are either really great for some students or really challenging for some students. Transition in and out from recess, same thing. It's really great to be outside. It's really hard to come back inside. So how are we being really cognizant of what is successful and difficult for the student and trying to set up their full day programming to support those successful learners.
And they would either start or end their day at foundation. And that, again, would help reduce the number of transitions that they would have.
And the last thing that you mentioned, this is a short-term process. Like, how will you judge success, and what will a successful process look like at the end? I think that's, if we're at the board level wondering how do we know if things are working, how will you know? I mean, it's going to be there's as you said, not every situation is appropriate for every learner. So
in a really key piece of research I was reading back in July, and this aligns with kind of experience in other districts too, the criteria for entry are a lot less strict than the criteria for exit, right? And so like having that in our minds, like we are not expecting perfection. We're not expecting students to be without challenge throughout the day. And ensuring that our exit criteria is just as structured as our entry criteria, so that we're not in that place where students are at the foundation site for 2 weeks, right? Like that will let us know that our system isn't working. And part of it too is at least monthly IEP meetings with the whole team to assess progress and talk about transitioning back to the neighborhood school.
And we will have, part of what we do is daily data collection on the IEP goals. So are they meeting and making progress towards our IEP goals, which are often related to regulation and making choices and flexible thinking so that they can transition into an environment that has more of the transitions.
So from the board level, we'll see a change in maybe the seclusion and restraint numbers. Is that how we would be then looking at this as far as success and progress towards?
Seclusion and restraint, staff injuries, office discipline referrals, and new suspensions. So those would be the 4 main areas that we look at as reasons, one of the reasons why, and why we are going with the elementary, because that's where the highest level is occurring. And so we're hoping with this, and it's 20 students, we can support up to 12 students in this program. So then if we are supporting our students in this program, there should be fewer office discipline referrals because our environment is allowing them to feel safe and not have the seclusion and the restraints.
Additionally, I believe it's fair, and working with the board on the opportunity to add agenda items to do what you like, updates at semester level or quarter level, especially as we look at a new style of program. I think more frequent updates are expected and more reasonable in those situations. So just, I think progress on those things are things that we will happily present based off of the cadence selected by the board, of whether it's a semester roll or quarter update. I would probably think more semester to have a good trend of the data.
My first question about foundations is where? Did I miss something like, where physically is the
We are
space?
currently exploring options for location within, Verona, within our building. So we know what we're looking for, so we're currently looking for the best place within our building.
Got it. All right, thank you. I didn't miss.
With our properties is what.
Yes, but TBD is what I'm hearing, but it's within our school buildings.
Yeah, there's still, did you read this, there's information about the qualities that you're looking for in a
Right.
facility.
Right,
And so just making sure that best meets all those criteria.
right.
Yeah.
Because that connected a bit to my thinking about transportation, right? The layers of the transitions piece also connecting to, where students are going to and from. I guess directly off of slide 54, maybe, if that is helpful for reference, just a couple of questions about the staffing piece. So just anticipating where we are with potential number of students to begin, do you have a number of students in mind that would be a maximum based on what you're anticipating for staffing? Did I say my question?
We're thinking 4 to 6.
Okay.
Per session. So up to 8 to 12. Probably start a little bit smaller at the beginning. We would have 3 staff. We would have 2 staff, and then every student would have their own person coming with them. So if we have 4 students, we would have 4 SEAs. And then we would have 2 staff that would help provide the coaching and support to our SEAs.
Which then connects to my next question, just thinking about some of the needs that you've highlighted, and Carly, some of the things that you've alluded to about like specific training for being staff connected to or working with students that are really needing some of these different programs. Does that then become a conversation with staff in terms of like a voluntary placement? I mean, right, I'm thinking about literally making these matches and how staff are going to be integral in those decisions. So we do make sure we have the right fit, that we do make sure we have staff that do feel they have the capacity and training. So just in general, curious how the conversations will go with staff so it isn't being assigned. I guess that part worries me, right, that it would be assigned.
We are in a building. We really have SEAs tell us what is their preference. I really love working in the area of academics. Oh, I really love figuring out and working with students who have more social and emotional needs. And we have found those matches. What staff are excited about is they love working with the students, and now they get the best of the best, teaching them how to do that and carrying that back into the buildings. So when we presented to VESPA, they did not have any concerns about that. So I'm just knowing the history that we generally have staff that really love to work with our most complex students.
I think it's also important to note, if we're talking about staffing, having that number of staff will allow them to focus on the social emotional needs while still yet focusing on grade level standards. So you'll have the social emotional work, and then students will still have access to their specific grade level work that they will have access to.
It'll be the new, language arts curriculum that they would be working on at that time with just greater opportunity for regulation so they can access the language arts curriculum.
And then can you just say who would be an example of related services staff, just because I wasn't quite sure?
Occupational therapy, speech therapy, counseling, psychologist.
That's awful.
Yeah, so a lot of the questions, I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I think I just generally have reservations about these type of programs not becoming alternative programming. They really continue as support. And as with most things, I really think that, the devil's in the details, right? Like how successfully is the gradual release back into the school carried out seems like a really crucial touch point. Finding ways of monitoring the students' feelings about being in these programs and any stigmas that might come with it seems to be important. And then I wonder, maybe I didn't hear this when we were talking about, what we're looking for with success. it seemed like from the data that you presented at the previous board meeting and then referred again to tonight, that there's a small number of students that have a large number of reportable interactions. And I'm wondering if a way to look at success, and maybe you've already said this, is about that sort of recidivism going down. If we see this program being successful, it'll mean that students aren't using it over and over and over again. And so I wonder if that's something that we're going to be able to look at some point to see, even the small changes in that direction. And I want to reiterate, kind of in this public setting, like, again, this is a program that I, as someone who used to work in training special education teachers, and I have, I'm kind of ambivalent about, a little bit antagonistic towards. But that being said, there is a deep need for this continuation of services, and I see that. And I think a lot of people see that, not only in our district, but nationwide. Like, students that are struggling with emotional behavioral challenges have like doubled in the last 10 years. And in a lot of ways, the laws and the structures that exist in schools aren't meant to deal with that. So, I'm for trying this. I think it's a needed thing. But again, the devil's kind of in the details. So, yeah.
And if I can just speak to that a little bit, I too, right? I have struggled with this. Dr. Halbert knows I've struggled with this. I'm like, I don't believe in alternative programs, right? Like, I never have for my career. But I do wholeheartedly believe we need to educate all of our students as long as we can within the district. And the options outside of our district, few to none, right? Like, there are waiting lists, students on waiting lists for beds at residential treatment schools. We have students who can't access additional alternative programs, right? So like that obligation, that risk of doing nothing feels so heavy right now, that this was really brought out of that. And so I appreciate, like, I want that feedback to continue, right? Like, this is not a place that we all want to be in necessarily, but it's out of obligation and commitment to our students that we're developing additional sense of this.
It's really reassuring to hear, honestly.
Yeah, well, thanks for being honest and
Yeah.
just sharing, being vulnerable with your perspective.
It went a little off the cuff, sorry.
No, but that's helpful. I think that's helpful
Yeah.
for families to hear too, right? That none of this is being taken lightly or is, an excuse to just.
And we hope to work ourselves out of the job someday, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's also important to note that, a lot of other places, the solution here is to push this problem onto other groups in the community that may manage it or may not. But, that just isn't meeting the need anymore. And so it's something that we've got to kind of step up and do. I think that's a really helpful way to think about it.
I have a question about the high school level. When we're going through this, it seems very clear. I mean, it seems at the high school level, it's more, you're failing a class, you need interventions, this is what we do. But what do we do about the behavioral aspects? And maybe that automatically links directly with academic, but not always. How do we ensure that those, COVID is still, yeah.
Very much so. And so one of the things that we're working on as well, just like in the foundations program, our all the teacher will be working, also coaching some of those behavior pieces. One of the things that we found from our empathy interviews we did with some of our scholars that were kind of fitting this mold as we were building this out, was that the school is just too big.
Yeah.
There were triggering events, we were sitting in a class with 30 students, we pass in a hallway with 1,800 students. Those were where a lot of these interactions were taking place. And so, unlike foundations, we won't be necessarily in a separate facilities we have right here at the high school. We don't want our scholars to feel like this is a different place where they're being sent. They're still part of our family. We just need to give them a little bit different access. And so where we've been looking specifically within our building, we're targeting rooms that are right next to entry and exit points that alternative ed teacher could then allow scholars to come in and out of that way to where the room is just right there. They don't have to travel to a very busy, very packed atrium and worry about some of those triggering events. And so we can help build that skill set, ultimately transition them into the rest of their day where they have the ability to experience that success and practice some of those strategies that we're helping to leverage.
Thank you. That's good to know. I think, I mean, ultimately, we're all still all our students are still learning to people. I mean, it's just, how do we provide that environment where they can learn in the best possible way? So I appreciate hearing what we do at the high school, because it is a big school. This would be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, team. Just for record and for our community, again, rightly so, we anticipate this will be hopefully a highly watched or rewatched portion of our meeting today. And just to probably say from a full leadership, and I think I speak for the team as well, we think of almost like a traditional or older alternative push-out model. We are vehemently and philosophically opposed to that in the Verona Area School District. So I just want that just publicly stated on behalf of our leadership. We fully oppose that. We do understand that we need intentional spaces that allow for better access for each individual learner in our organization, and that's what we feel like the team has brought forward as opportunities for that to happen. We're here in the space designed for our learners, but we do not believe in push out of our organization.
Yeah.
Thanks, team.
Thanks for the update.
Thank you, team. Yeah, that's a helpful summary. Especially because it's not trying to use different language to be sneaky.
Correct.
It's philosophically
Yeah.
rooted and grounded.
Do I sit at the table?
You do.
All right.
HR, staffing.
Absolutely. If you're not on the operations side of the house, have a good night. You've been burning the candles. Go. Enjoy.
Apparently you are on the operations side.
Yes,
Yeah.
you're on the operations side, however.
Settle in.
Welcome, Mrs. Taylor, to the first one.
Yeah. Should we take just a 2-minute transitional recess? Yes.
Madam President.
Is there a motion? Joe says yes and he's out. 2 minutes, okay. Yeah, I'll do it. All right,
Oh, so me.
thank you. I think Chad's got it. Yeah,
Hey, Jeff.
we're back.
You ready to go, guys?
We are ready.
I'm gonna take us back to like 6:23 tonight, with all the energy we felt in this room. And now we're gonna bring all of that back a couple of hours later to talk about the important work of budget and staffing as it relates to the budget. We are gonna do what we can to be as concise as possible, but this is important work. Where we finish off tonight is really us starting to hone in on some fine tuning related to finishing up this year's budget and what next year's budget is going to look like. Pete, I just put the recurring appointment on Pete's calendar for us to start to get the budget book back together for this upcoming fall. So that's right around the corner here. With that being said, I'm going to turn things over to Rochelle. We thought that this was, we're going to try to tell a story tonight. Staffing, debt management in this year's budget is going to tie into some end of the year decisions we have to make, and then starting to look at what that 24-25 budget will look like. And they all are interconnected one way or another. And Rochelle's update will certainly have both budget implications and what the classroom is going to look like for next year. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rochelle.
Thank you, Chad. I want to reiterate kind of what Chad's sentiments are, as well as just step into that this year's staffing and HR conversation is very different from what we've had in years past. We're continuing to monitor student enrollment. We are continuing to monitor our HR practices and how we're aligning them to results policies, our operating expectations, and student outcomes. We have made historic investments in compensation. I reflect back on 2 years ago when we were talking about the biggest raises ever, and that seems to have beat us a couple of years in a row. Huge investments in classroom support with 30 FTE being added into our classrooms this year, as well as ensuring that we're aligning our HR practices with the referendum promises that we made, as well as the unknowns of what a state budget is going to look like to impact our budget in the next couple of years. The work that we're doing this year is really going to make it a little bit easier for us to have more difficult conversations next. So I want to recognize every principal, every staff member is advocating for more for student support, and we have to find that balance on where we can do it in the right spots, but also remain fiscally responsible. So as we step into the next couple of slides, I want to align us with our OE4, which is the personnel expectations that you will Dr. Clarity in alignment with, as well as our strategic framework. Every action that we take now aligns with our strategic framework. Within planning for the Verona School District, this year specifically, we really focused on equity-based staffing. We talk about this a lot, but we're seeing it come to fruition this year. Every move that we are making is based on student needs and data. We have seen shifts already, and we know that those shifts will come as long as they are used for leadership moves. For example, we had a class bubble this year, and we moved a first grade teacher into a kindergarten teacher. Equity shift because of student needs. I also want to call in the space that this upcoming year's FTE investments are really almost non-existent and incredibly limited because of the 30 FTE that we built into the budget for this year. Our commitments as we go through this process is that we are withholding FTE through attrition where it makes sense. To actually monitor what student enrollment is looking at so that we can invest in those bubbles down the road. It's not with every position where we see a resignation that we're withholding, but we are pausing to say, is this the right job in the right location for the right needs? We're monitoring our enrollment monthly, and even more than that, almost weekly for many people, to make sure that we are aligning FTE with class sizes. We are also limiting and understanding and thinking about what our class size means and maxes look like. So our handbook says in elementary, it's 15 to 25 kiddos per classroom teacher. Secondary, it's 15 to 30. What you will see is that we prioritize smaller class sizes for kindergarten and first grade, medium class sizes for second and third, and a little bit larger for fourth and fifth. So as we slide into middle school, our class sizes continue to kind of build on that trajectory. This is a new slide for every one here to see. What you will see on the left-hand side of your screen is our third Friday fall count. So September 3rd Friday counts on students in seats. On the left-hand side of your screen, you will see what we call our next year indicator. That is what we have as of last week for students in classes for next year, as how they're pointed in our schools. So for example, you could have a third grade student that is pointing to fourth grade next year, and that's how we're pulling it. It also includes enrollment through last week. What it doesn't include is future enrollment. It doesn't include the shifts that we see with students moving in and out of private and public schools that we see sometimes with our elementary to secondary shifts. It also looks very different from the right hand to the left hand, because on your right hand side, you see TWE and non-TWE broken out, and on the left side, it is bunched together. What I would point out to you is where you can see a bubble grade at Stoner Prairie. Kindergarten this year in Stoner Prairie had 79 kiddos enrolled as of the third Friday count in September. And what you will see is there are 80 projected for the next year indicator in first grade. So that's how you see the shift from this year to next. This is what we use to monitor staffing FTE for classroom sizes between now and the middle of September. This next data point is also something that is very important for our public and our educators to understand, as well as the board, and that's really looking at our teacher unit ratios, the number of students we have per teacher FTE. That's not classroom teacher FTE, that's everyone in our teacher unit. And our goal is to be somewhere in the middle. We don't want to be on the top, nor do we want to be at the bottom. What you will see with the 30 FTE investment is that this year we're sitting at almost a little under 11 students per teacher across the district. And this is a balance. We talk about this, paying more people or paying people more. Well, that's kind of how we've gotten to this, but we are still in a really good spot. There should not be any significant concerns with where we're sitting. The next slide is our all employee ratios. The number of total employees across the district, custodians, food service, SEAs, administrators, teachers, to students. And again, we want to be somewhere in that middle. We don't want to be at the top, we don't want to be at the bottom. We'll rate around that middle section again. And with our 30 FTE, it is 7.2 students per employee of the district, not per teacher.
So Michelle, I will add to that just a little bit in terms of your comment of wanting to end up somewhere in the middle here. In the utopia, where we weren't constricted by a revenue limit or an operating referendum we're spending down, we'd love to have a one-to-one ratio, but that is not the case. We have guidelines in terms of what we can do on an annual basis with our budget. I think this is good information for board members to understand in terms of even community conversations you're having with people that either have the perception that we don't have enough staff or way overstaffed and spending money that we don't have. And that I think kind of ties into Rochelle's comment around being somewhere in the middle of our county comparisons. We're proud of the fact that we pay our hardworking educators well, but we also want to make sure that we're staffed appropriately to support all our students.
I want to back up the train a little bit and talk about our investments that we've made over the last couple of years. In 21-22 is when we rolled out our new teacher salary schedule that has the 2% step increases. In 22-23, we had a total salary increase on average of 6.7%. We also invested significantly in our hourly staff, giving them another $2 per hour investment in the middle of the year when we looked at comparing ourselves to the private sector. This is also the year that we clarified our teacher years of service and began the compression fix. So year 1 of 3 of our compression works. This year, a historical investment in base wage and total wages, an average salary increase of 8%. We added 30 FTE this year as well. And we're continuing to focus on our referendum commitments as we look at that FTE. We also added a 12% increase to our co-curricular schedule that hadn't been adjusted in over a decade.
And Rochelle, I do think this has made an appreciable difference that we've seen in terms of the number and quality of applicants we are seeing for open positions. And that has changed in a matter of a few years. I think coming out of COVID has also helped, but we are, for the most part, seeing high quality applicants for different positions, that's where the rubber hits the road in terms of making sure we got the right people in our classrooms.
For this upcoming year then, our work is to align all of our staffing moves, all of our equity-based staffing moves, our guiding principles, our strategic framework, and our results policies. We recognize the investments that we made in the referendum commitments, but we also need to continue to monitor how we are moving forward with that Wisconsin unknown budget. So we know we are stepping into our 3rd year of our compression fix, third year. We are holding back and collapsing and realigning FTE with turnover. At the end result, what we're looking right now is that we will have 1 FTE added into the budget for this upcoming year. We continue to commit to our referendum promises, enriched programs, specialized services, attracting and retaining our best staff, multilingual programming, desirable student-to-staff ratios, and staff collaboration. We are also finalizing our base wage bargaining that will most likely include step increases and cost-neutral handbook updates that will be brought to you at our next meeting.
Rochelle, I'll add to this, just commend you and the work of our academic services team around getting to a spot that we can move forward with the mega post that happened and the hiring for next year. Dr. Clarity, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but the two of us were used to be principals, and this time of year, you weren't doing your job unless you were advocating for your school. And quite honestly, there was never enough. There was always an additional student need that you thought could be met with additional staffing. But I think our entire staff, in particular our leadership teams and our principals, kind of understanding a little more cautious approach for this year's budget ahead of next year's unknown state budget, for the most part was met in a very collaborative way, and our SPLTs and our principals understand.
Rochelle, I just want to also thank you for your presentation thus far, but also clarify for our community and a reminder to our board who are already aware of this, that, you know, the sentence was the staff increase historically of 8%. The administrators did not accept the 8%. And so the administrators worked with just to help with making sure that we had the staffing focus and making sure that we were prepared for future budgets, went below that, and those went to our staff in our classrooms and into our buildings, not to administrators.
Mm-hmm. And that increase was in line with CPI. And in fact, our team, our teachers and our support staff kind of took a year pause in terms of actually gaining anything related to inflation for a year of service. So that was what we did this last year.
Jenny, just going down the next step of what our staffing allocation process looks like. This is a slide that we've seen in years past where we start our staffing in December, January, where our principals are working with SPLT to really understand the needs of the building. Those principals then work with their directors to really build out what their building-based staffing plans look like for the upcoming year. Our principals then presented their staffing plans to central office leadership at the end of February, which was then passed along and reviewed line by line by Dr. Clarity, Dr. Hawkins, and Chad to really align all of the moves with equity-based staffing expectations. That allowed us to actually do a mega post, the earliest in Dane County this year, to ensure that we're getting out our open vacancies early, but also ensuring that our educators know what's happening. It's a very stressful time for them to not know what classroom they're going to be teaching in next year or what grade level they're going to be in. And so this is a better way of looking at our staffing timeline. In January, we had that kickoff meeting with our principals. At the end of February, our principals and our department leads shared their allocation presentations. On March 4th, we pushed out our mega post. We are now in this place where we are monitoring and posting jobs as needs arise and come through. Starting at the end of this month and maybe into next month, we're going to start switching our focus to really start moving into and ensuring that our new employees, our hired employees, have a very strong, successful onboarding program so that September of next year, they are ready to go. So for us, the next steps are we're going to continue to post and interview and hire for our vacancies. Tonight, you will be approving our teacher contracts for this upcoming school year. We are also going to spend time in the next couple of months reviewing our new employee 90-day surveys and our exit surveys to help inform our practices for next year. You'll see both bolded here is the base wage bargaining fees. We have ratification votes for VA, EA, and VESPA coming out next week. That will come to you on the May 20th board meeting. We will also be sharing our handbook updates on the May 20th. Anything you want to add?
It's a good summary of where we're at, and thanks again, Rochelle, for taking your team forward. The very busy last couple of months here.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Thanks, Rochelle.
Thank you. Can I ask, maybe, I do have a question that maybe then just relates to you really quickly. So the dance I'm curious about is the whole process of SBLT, leadership team, bringing things to hold, having these anticipatory shifts that need to happen, while hopefully having staff be aware of shifts that are coming, specifically, right, if I'm going to be asked to change sites, is that, how much of that is conversation versus voluntold? And I'm sure that's not an easy answer in every scenario, but of course, deep down, I hope that there's as much proactive conversation with staff that are going to feel a change in their position without just no say at all, I guess, is what I'm saying.
You know, I think sometimes we forget about the human part of human resources. So our leaders care about their staff deeply. And so voluntolding really is the last option before working through the reasons why and asking for volunteers. There are times that we just have to make shifts between buildings when other folks really are unable to make the moves or staffing groups are so small. But we try very, very hard to keep folks in their buildings and at their grade levels. And when we get to that point where we have to have conversations, it is the principal and me having those conversations and then thinking about what resources and tools that staff member needs now to be successful next year. So that is a commitment that we make.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question. We heard this good presentation earlier on the extended pathways. And it sounded like there were some new positions being contemplated for that programming. Is that factor into kind of those equity-based staffing decisions and FTE neutral assessment that we're talking about?
They are, so we took it a step further and looked at our special ed case manager ratios, students to staff. And our ratios are some of the smallest in Dane County. And so through attrition, we are holding back some of those case manager FTEs, realigning the key sizes across buildings to then invest in the extended living pathways.
I actually think it's the exact example of an equity-based budget that we're moving resources toward the students need now. And in this case, we're doing so without a budget impact. We're kind of tasking Dr. Hawkins and Dr. Holbert to find it within their staff to put people in the right spots. Thank you, Rochelle.
Thank you.
We'll tag Pete in here. All right. I think we're gonna be all right, but there's some newer content for the board tonight, so I'm hoping everybody can hang with me in terms of all the big pieces. Big idea. This is as busy, at least in our short tenure here, as we've been in with moving pieces in the current budget year. And we've got some moves we're recommending again tonight. One of them tied to the language arts curricular purchase. So we wanted to update the board on the calendar, get us through this year and start to take a look at next year. We're going to review the progress we've made with debt management because that does directly tie into some recommendations that our team has for the board in terms of budget moves on the way. We have a 23-24 budget update that has to do with this year and the language arts purchase, and then we're going to take a look at next year's budget. And I will be brief here. The board has seen this before, but I just wanted to highlight a few of the key dates regarding what we've got going on with our budget. So we do have, following, we're hoping probably this budget amendment tonight, maybe one more. We will start to track our way towards closing the books on July 1st, and then we'll be totally focusing on next year's budget, having aid estimates, and we'll be diving into where we'll get 24, 25. We will release a budget book for you in the month of August to start to review as we get ourselves to the fall. And remember, we've got to get ourselves to October 21st when you pass the final budget. Pete and I went through this with Joe, and there's no perfect way for us to attempt to kind of piece all of this together tonight. But we actually wanted to kind of start with the progress this board has made relative to debt savings over the last handful of years, 6 years. Because we're going to make some slightly different recommendations towards the strategy tonight. We'll likely pick this back up next year, but wanted to pause and recognize that we have saved the taxpayers of this community $7.5 million in interest payments with the prepayment of debt that we have done over the last 6 years. That is a huge number. This will also pay dividends to us when we eventually have to build some additional square footage for our growing school district and allow us some flexibilities to kind of feather in some debt. But this is a big number for us to kind of hold on to as we work our way through some different moves this evening. And here's how this is related. We've got some options as we wrap up this fiscal year related to debt management. The 23-24 budget as it's set right now has $12.5 million set aside for tax levy. Our minimum debt payment this upcoming year is a little over $10 million. So you can see we already have $2.5 million available to either defease or hold on to as we wrap up this fiscal year. We also have money available through Fund 10, and that number is $1.7 million, and that is leftover money from us levying all $19 million of Fund 10 this year. That has already happened, but we have the ability to spend it on more curricular material, deposit it in fund balance, or potentially defease some debt. So tonight, we've got $4 million Pete and I want to discuss with you, and we have a recommendation in terms of what we do with it this year that's a little different than we've done in the past. OPEB, which is going to be a newer term for the board, is a piece of that. So if you're hanging with me here, this is a gray scale. We can go anywhere in between. Pete and I decided to kind of work with the board on some binary options here. One option as we wrap up this fiscal year is we actually don't defease any money this year. And there are a few changing variables that we want to talk to the board about. So one, as we work our way through kind of the pros column there of doing nothing, and that's what Pete and I are recommending this year, would do the following. We'd increase our fund balance in Fund 10 and Fund 39, at least for this year. If there was another land purchase we had to make for our growing school district, that would pay dividends either this year or into the future. If we spend less money on defeasing debt, we would get it up in state aid the following year. And this would be an insurance move for us moving into an unknown 25-26 state budget. Additionally, smaller things, but they shouldn't be glossed over. We avoid the legal fees of going through the defeasance process against this year. We continue to avoid short-term borrowing. And the cash we have on hand now is yielding higher rates of interest. So what we save on interest earnings relative to low interest rates on the debt we're paying, we start to close that gap because we're making more money with the cash we have in the bank in terms of that cash yielding interest. Cons to this strategy, at least for a year, we wouldn't have long-term interest savings. And we, at least for this year, would not lessen the number of years we have for outstanding debt. The other option here is to continue with the defeasance strategy, which would be $4 million this upcoming year. We still have time to do that. We'd save interest on debt again, and we decrease the number of years we have to pay on debt. There's a chance, and Pete would have to run the numbers, because of inflation, we would need to get back into short-term cash borrowing, and we would have less aid for the following year. This is a text-heavy and kind of idea-heavy slide. I am going to pause and see if the board's kind of hanging with me here in terms of us press and pause on the debt defeasance strategy for a year. We would have the ability next year, after we know what's going on with the state budget, to pick this up again. And could even do so to the point of dipping into fund balance to chase that. Yeah, John.
I was gonna wait until you're done. Right?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I mean, this all makes sense to me. As much as I would like to keep the money in the defeasance, and I don't generally like doing nothing, the benefits of, having insurance against the state budget and continuing to avoid short-term borrowing, for me, like, that kind of outweighs it. So, yeah.
Thanks for that, John. And we've got the 5-year model is actually our last kind of keystone slide that we're covering.
One question I just want to clarify as we're moving forward. Our current debt was taken on at a very low interest rate, if I remember correctly. Is that accurate?
In the previous,
Yeah, somewhere in 3%.
And if we needed to borrow for cash flow at any point, because we've historically always done short-term borrowing and we've kind of tried to move out of that. If we were borrowing, what's our rate, our interest rate on that? Like, not 3.
You know how
Line of credit was like 8 or 9%. Yeah, line of credits, I think it was, 8% was the maximum on there. It would have been whatever whatever the main, I can't think of the prime rate, thank you, plus 0.5% on that or something.
Because I'm kind of with John in I like to be prepaying down on debt, but we're in a weird place where prepaying on debt, the benefit of doing so could really be potentially significantly offset by actually just having to go through short-term borrowing process.
Yeah, and Meredith, you'll actually see on kind of our last slide, Pete and I are making a recommendation, at least tonight, that we work our way towards a 99 million as we kind of cast that forward for the next 4 years. And our property value continues to grow with net new construction. We start to build in the ability for us to levy more than the minimum in Fund 39. So next year, that window continues to grow again, and we would have the ability to potentially do a bigger defeasance next year. So we actually build up a little bit of Fund 39 fund balance with our move this year when we do not defease anything. And we'll know more about the state budget. What are we getting on using of cash? Is that a year time?
They're about 5.5% roughly.
I just get the quick basic 101 as to why defeasing nothing gives us more state aid.
State aid is set on a couple of variables.
Remembering my budget trading.
It is really 3 big things. How many kids you have, how much you're spending per kid, and how much property value you have. So the piece the lever we'd be pulling with state aid in this case, we'd be spending less per student.
Got it.
Because that goes into the aid calculation.
with that payment.
That's helpful. Okay, thank you.
Okay, then we took care of that. These are all good questions and super good discussion.
The only thing I would, just out of curious about it, maybe just as a, off the cuff, I wonder what is the opportunity cost of the long-term interest savings? By not putting it towards, paying down debt, what's the estimated dollar savings that we'd be giving up? Just to have an idea of like, for us to break even on this decision, how much do we have to do in the short term?
Yeah, Pete can work with, PMA, and we can actually probably give that in a week ending update to the school board. Juan Carlos, one thing to remember is we're only pausing for a year. So that all that interest savings it'd be actually, in some regard, difficult to model because we would not cast it forward as if it's an indefinite move on behalf of the district. We're just not prepaying debt for one fiscal year until we find out what's going on with the state budget. And I think there's a decent chance I'm sitting here this time next year if the budget wraps up in a decent spot in October, recommending to the board that we defease $6 million next year. Because we keep building our fund balance and depending on what happens with property values, have some leverage inside our annual budget to do a big defease next year. So we're really just foregoing interest savings this year and casting it forward all the way through the duration of the debt is actually a potentially moot point because we can jump right back into one year again. So here's what. All right. Good discussion so far. We have kind of a new concept. Meredith may be one of the, with her long tenure on the board, and Jen, with her previous life, probably heard the word OPEB, which has been kind of just sitting in the corner as we're managing every year's budget. Pete has been building in $2.3 million a year to pay down OPEB debt. And right now is the time for us to talk in a little greater detail about what it is and a budget move we are recommending relative to OPEB. Very connected to the discussion we just had about not defeasing anything towards debt. So here's this concept of OPEB, and this stands for Other Post-Employee Benefits. The district in 2014 made a fairly unique move that has not been replicated too many places statewide. In hindsight, was a very good budget move to make with long-term planning and budgeting in mind in 2014. If you can imagine this, on an annual basis, our district pays out benefits to retirees. It could be sick leave, it could be related to healthcare, it could be related to unused vacation days, to the tune of about $2.5 million a year. In 2014, the district made a decision to take a $35 million loan out that they knew would cost them $2.3 million a year to pay off, if you guys are following me. They had a lump sum of $35 million at the time that they could put in an investment account. And their theory was, if that investment account can beat the interest that they're paying on that money, they can not only have a constant cash flow to pay OPEB benefits, but they can also have a set budget, $2.3 million a year, and you're not chasing the yo-yo of post-retirement benefits that can vary greatly. With long tenured retirees 1 year and not the next. So I'm seeing lots of head nods with the board kind of following the district strategy in terms of OPEB. So we have monthly reports from PMA, our financial advisor, updating us on the health of our OPEB account. And Pete and I have been watching this closely for 2 years. This is very complex work where PMA is attempting to give us an update regarding the OPEB account being fully funded. Meaning,
The money we have in the account that started at $35 million will be gone the same year we make our last loan payment. And that is supposed to be 2034. If that came to fruition, the plan worked perfect. That was initiated in 2014. In 2014, they didn't know how many employees we have. They didn't know what was going on with interest rates. They didn't know how much that we would be paying right now. They did actuary science and made their best guess. I'm here to tell you right now that we believe that the OPEB account, the original $35 million nest egg, is still gaining interest to this day, that we're paying $2.3 million on an annual basis, will run out of money before 2034. So if that happens, and we believe it will, what would happen in those bubble years is the school board and whoever's sitting in this seat, I suppose it could be me, I'll be old and grumpy in 2034, but it could be me. Dr. C's still here, I'm with it. We have a decision to make on how we would fund that. You could fund it out of the annual operating costs of the school district. You could dip into fund balance and pass an unbalanced budget a couple years in a row until you could catch up on a new loan, or you could refinance the debt and take new money, a new loan out in 2032 and build in the shortfall into that loan. Tonight, if everyone's been following me, Pete and I are actually recommending that one of the things we do with that extra $4 million is actually put money into the OPEB account that is gaining money through investments to buy us an additional year in 2033, if that's making sense. And we've got the slide to kind of show this to the board. So these are the actuarial numbers that we're working on with our financial advisor on a monthly basis. It is an inexact science, but Pete and his team have put in, along with Rochelle, countless hours over the last 6 months to get these numbers updated. And what this tells you is really a few things, if you can kind of see this. Those little short blue lines are how much we owe on that $35 million loan, which is $2.3 million, give or take, every year. That blue cascading line is showing what we have in the OPEB account, which right now is about $13 million. We're spending $2.3 million a year out of it, and as you work that line down, it intersects at about 2032. And you can see the big arrow I put in there. That's the arrow we have for the last year we owe money on that debt. So we'd be 2 years short. Tonight, we're recommending a $1 million budget amendment that we would send into Fund 73, allow PMA to invest it for the next 10 years, and we'll buy whoever's sitting in these seats an additional year of OPEB benefits down the road, according to the actuarial science. I hope kind of the math science teacher in me did an okay job explaining that to the board, because it's a little hard to follow. Questions?
Can I just get a restatement around the importance of the year 2034?
2034 is the year we pay off the $35 million loan.
Because that was what was anticipated when at the time of the $35 million investment, it was meant to be a 20-year.
Yep.
Okay.
And the whole idea was set it and forget it, and it's beautiful. Pete is not having to chase, oh, we're gonna need an extra $300,000 this year. There's 3 people that are retiring that have 42 years experience. We're not, that's not happening. There are years we spend more and years we spend less, but we always pay the same debt. That's the whole idea behind this concept, and it works. We're buying the district a little insurance by putting money at this time. We have this opportunity this year because of having excess levy in Fund 10 to make this play. It's putting money in an account that will gain interest through lawful investments related to K-12 finance that will, people sitting in this chair 10 years from now will be very thankful we made this move. Because it looks like we'll be short. And there's a chance 5 years from now, we might come back and say, we need to put another $1 million in here to make sure it's balanced. or depending on what happens with interest rates, if we get a deflation in the economy and all of a sudden could dive into a loan at 1.5% or 2%, we might recommend to the board, let's refinance this whole thing right now and cast it forward another 25 years.
Okay.
So there's lots of options over the next 10 years.
That was gonna be my next question is, so then what happens in 2034, anticipating to that, to sort of cast forward into the next chunk of time,
Yeah,
which I know is a longer discussion.
Right, and the board, you'd have really two decisions. Did this work for you? Do we want to do it alone? Or what 98% of school districts do, they build it into their annual budget and then chase it.
And try to, yeah. Okay. Thank you for that.
You bet. Okay, that was probably the most new content we've got tonight. And then I think we can wrap up the rest in relatively short order. So this is the summary slide with all the moving pieces related to this crazy 23-24 budget. We currently have funds available to the fees, after I just told you about OPEB, to the tune of $3.3 million. We're here tonight with a budget amendment for language arts curriculum purchase and money for staff professional development. We're going to pull out $1 million if the board says go for it tonight on the budget amendment. And we really only have $1.7 million left of a surplus budget that would go into fund balance and our insurance policy. After all the moving pieces we discussed tonight. Jen, I did see Joe make eye contact with Juan Carlos, and then turned me when we made the vote for the budget amendment. It's going to be my recommendation that you retake the vote to actually account for all of the moving pieces, so we make sure we get it right, because Pete actually has to, we'll show you the paperwork. Pete shoves us through DPI, and we actually just have to have the board endorse the budget amendment as Pete and I have presented it. It includes the language arts purchase, but there are other moving pieces, the OPEB transfer and the staff PD that are all inclusive in that budget amendment.
Okay, got it.
Perfect. So you will have a board vote in a little bit. And I will quickly here, a preview of 24-25. The board is seeing this, balance our needs with taxes and mill rate. The board is seeing this slide, levy and mill rate goals. These did not change from last year. I did want to point out, remember we went into detail on the school levy credit last year and how it impacted taxes. You will hear from Pete and Chad in the coming months. The school levy credit is a thing again this year and will impact our recommendation relative to mill rate for the 24-25 budget. This is our latest slide of assumptions. You heard from Rochelle, +1 on FTE. That has changed over the last 2 years from +10 to +5 to +1 tonight. The rest of it should all be very familiar to the school board in terms of assumptions we're building in to the 24-25 budget. All right, and lastly, our update with the 5-year model. We had lots of discussion tonight on Fund 39, and that line is about halfway through there. A reminder to the school board, our Fund 39 minimum debt payment is about $10.5 million. Pete and I build in, the board will have final say on this, but a scenario tonight to look at of lowering our mill rate below 11 for the first time in over a decade, continuing to build in a strategy to prepay some capital debt again next year, and foreshadow with the board what we have shared for next year relative to an inflationary increase for all of our staff members. Will be a balanced budget. We'll have $800,000 of surplus Fund 10 money in this coming year's budget that we passed in October, but did foreshadow if some of these conservative numbers hold regarding the state budget, somewhere between $1 and $2 million budget shortfall for the following year 25-26 budget. A million variables exist there. How many students we have, what we get out of the state, what happens with aid, what happens with property value. But it is going to be a more difficult budget, most likely in 25-26. Any questions?
I'm good.
Okay,
I'm ready to roll.
I don't think we have any further
You
questions.
both looked at me the same time.
Just because my back was to you, I could see everyone else except you,
Everybody looked
so.
at me, I'm done.
All right,
All right, thank you,
thank you, guys.
Pete and Chad. All right, so we're moving out of superintendent's report, we're coming back to board action. So we're gonna redo our proposed budget amendment vote. And if you wanna reference again slide 68, because that seems to be the place where we have the summary of what we're actually voting on fully with the language arts curriculum and more. So is there a motion to approve the budget transfer amendment as approved on slide 89? Motion by John, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Joe. All those in favor of approving the budget update on slide 89, signify with aye. Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. So moving along in our agenda, any OE8 updates, any planning, anything that's on right now? Don't think so. General board updates, just thank you in advance for meetings and all things on calendars, so pay attention to that for tomorrow morning and tomorrow evening. Moving on to public comment. Do we have any public comment? Great, okay. Superintendent consent agenda, please make sure you've looked over the consent agenda. Are there any questions? Just quite a bit here. Hearing none, the superintendent's consent agenda is approved as presented, and the board consent agenda, again, making sure you've looked over everything there. Are there any questions? Hearing none, the board's consent agenda is also approved. So future agenda items, again, just meetings listed on our calendar and a couple of additions that have been added to this week. And making sure you're also watching your calendars for the site visits that have been scheduled. Thank you, Lori, for getting those all on calendars as well. All right, then we will adjourn to closed session. I have too many tabs open, sorry. Adjourning to closed session under Wisconsin statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved regarding claims of personal injury. Is there, thank you, Meredith motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second by John. We're gonna move a roll call vote to go to closed session. Juan Carlos. Going to closed session, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, Joe.
Aye.
Meredith? Aye. John?
Yeah.
I am an aye as well. We are officially in closed session.